Have you ever trained a model and thought that, oh wait, how does it even realize that it has made a mistake? Like, how does a bunch of math know that, oops, I went wrong? Let's try again. Welcome to the world of forward propagation and loss function, the thinking and feeling part of your model. Forward propagation is the model making its best guess, and the loss function is just a reality check. It slaps the model right across the face and tells it, here's how wrong you are, now you gotta fix yourself. And guess what? This tiny dance of guessing, checking, improving is what powers all these extraordinary models like Spotify recommendation and self-driving cars. Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Selena, and in this week's video, we are going to break down forward propagation and loss functions. No fluff, just real intuition, real math, and the secret behind how models actually learn. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Forward propagation is where the input data goes through the neural network layer by layer to generate an output or a prediction. At each layer, the input gets transformed by a set of weights, biases, and activation functions. It's like the model is processing the data step by step to come to a conclusion or generate an output what it thinks should be. Let us take an example of predicting exam performance to understand the concept even better. Imagine you're a college student preparing for a big exam and you want to predict whether you'll pass or fail based on the number of hours you have studied and the number of practice questions that you've solved. In our first layer, that is the input layer, we start with two input features. X1 is the number of hours you have studied and X2 is the number of practice questions that you've attempted. As you can see from the diagram, the inputs x1 and x2, that is 5 and 20, are multiplied by their respective weights of 0.1 and 0.5. Next, we add them and get the sum as 10.5. Next, we add the bias term, which is plus 1, and get 11.5. And finally, we apply the activation function, that is ReLU, to get our final answer. We have already studied the activation function ReLU in our previous video. So when we give it the input of 11.5, as it is a positive input, it will return the same value. So after applying ReLU to 11.5, we just get back 11.5. We'll follow the similar steps for the second neuron, neuron 2, and get the output as 7 after applying the ReLU activation function. The last layer is the output layer. Over here, we multiply the values of the neurons from the hidden layer with their respective weights to get a final output after applying the activation function. Over here, we have used the sigmoid activation function because it is the output layer and we want to classify our final answer as pass or fail, which is a binary value. Our final prediction has come out to be 0.99, which means that it is very close to 1 and hence you are very likely to pass. Now that we've seen how forward propagation works, you must be wondering what's really happening inside those hidden layers. Well, here's the thing. Hidden layers are the backbone of a neural network. They are responsible for capturing complex relationships in the data. Without them, a neural network would be stuck doing only basic linear transformations. And that seriously limits our power to understand the real-world complex data. Hidden layers perform a lot of crucial tasks, like extracting high-level features, reducing the dimensionality, dealing with noise, and also interpreting or calculating the patterns in the data. To begin with, the input takes in the raw image data as pixel values. So each neuron in the input layer is actually a pixel from the given image. It passes on this data to the further hidden layers. The first hidden layer identifies basic patterns like edges, corners, and gradients, and applies convolutional filters to understand these shapes. It is similar to how the brain processes visual input by first detecting lines and boundaries. The second hidden layer takes the detected edges and combines them to form more complex patterns and shapes, like eyes, ears, or nose. Think of it like you're assembling pieces of a puzzle to bring them together and form a bigger picture. The third hidden layer combines complex patterns to form the full object models, like the faces, any other objects or recognizable structures that might be there in the image. At the end, the output layer uses these features that are learned by the previous hidden layers to make the final prediction. So after passing the data through multiple hidden layers and getting a final prediction, we ask ourselves this question: is this prediction any good? This is where the concept of a loss value comes in. It is a measure of the wrongness of your final answer. It tells you how far off your prediction is from the target value or the actual value. The bigger the loss value, the worse our prediction is. But as the loss value reduces, it means that our model is doing better and the accuracy of the model increases. And now enters the hero of our story, or the loss function. It is a tool we use to determine the loss value for each prediction. So in a way, the loss function is like our compass. During training, it guides the network by telling it exactly how wrong it is and in which direction it should turn to get a better prediction. Loss functions can be of two types: regression loss functions that are used to predict continuous values, and classification loss functions that are used for categories or classes. Let us now understand both these types one by one. Mean square error is one of the most popular regression loss functions. It calculates the average of the square of the errors. Larger errors are penalized more heavily because of the squaring. So this is good for situations where bigger errors or deviations are not needed. So when you want your model to be sensitive to outliers or big deviations, you can use this loss function. For example, when your predicted output is 5, but the target value is 10, then the error becomes 5 squared or 25. So a small error of 5 gets enlarged, and hence you can see it as a big penalty. Our next loss function is mean absolute error, that calculates the average of the absolute errors. This loss function treats all errors equally, and hence it is more robust to outliers, because regardless of the size, we just take the absolute value. This is used when you want a balanced view of the errors and you don't want your outliers to dominate the training. Hoover loss is a good combination of mean squared error and mean absolute error. It handles the outliers really well and also tackles the large error values. This is controlled by a hyperparameter called delta. So when this delta value is small, it behaves like mean absolute error, and when it is large, it behaves like mean squared error. This can be used when your data has a few outliers, but you don't want them to dominate the error. Let us now jump to classification loss functions, starting with binary cross entropy. This loss function is used for binary classification tasks of 0 or 1. It calculates the difference between what is actually predicted and the true label or the target label. The output is in the range between 0 and 1 because it is coming from the sigmoid activation function. The loss value increases as your predicted probability diverges from the target label. For example, if your true label is 1 and your predicted label is 0.9, this means that the difference is just 0.1. That means it is a low loss. But if your true label is 1 and your predicted value is 0.1, this means there is a high difference, high loss, because the difference is 0.9. Next, we have categorical cross entropy. This is used for multi-class classification where the output is in the form of one-hot encoded labels. Categories are actually text data and the computer cannot understand that. So we convert these into binary numbers, that is 0, 1, and we make different sequences of them. This is called one-hot encoding so that the computer understands the data better. This function penalizes the model when the predicted probability for the correct class is low. Let us understand this with an example. Let's say that the actual values are 0, 1, and 0. And in the first case, the predicted values are 0.1, 0.8, and 0.1. So we'll go step by step. So the actual label first is 0 and the predicted one is 0.1. So the difference is only of 0.1, which means it's correct. For the next one, the actual label is 1 and the predicted is 0.8. So the difference is only of 0.2, which is also correct. And next, again the difference is just of 0.1. This means that this loss value is low and our prediction is on the correct side. Now in the second prediction, the values are 0.3, 0.3, and 0.4. And if you compare again with the difference, you will see that this is a higher loss value, and hence this prediction is not as good. Finally, we have sparse categorical cross entropy. This is similar to categorical cross entropy, but in this case, we predict integer labels instead of the one hot encoded labels we were using before. This saves memory and it is easier to handle for large class sets. So now we know how to measure how wrong our model is. But the next question is, how do we actually make it better? That's where the magic of optimization comes in. We don't just sit there staring at the loss value going, oops, that's bad. We actually do something about it. And that is what we will discuss in the next video. So that was all for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it and got to learn something new this week. And if you did, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I'll be back next week with another exciting video. Till then, thank you for watching and see you again.